ladies and gentlemen of the world, of the YouTube world, of the voiceover world, welcome back to The Outspoken. I'm your host, Eric Shepard. Trying to do another streaming thing. We've got an amazing guest. As always, if you're with us live, you have questions for our guest, who's apparently dropping things. What the heck in the world? Good Lord. It's hard. Good help. It's hard to find. Let us know, and you could hop in the comments and let us know that you're with us live, as we are. Today, we got a doozy for you. A doozy, I tells you, because I'm 100,000 years old and I say things like doozy. We've got the amazing Tom Kane, Thomas Kane. I've been trying to do my Tom Kane voice today, and I've been really just murdering it. Thomas Kane, Tom Kane. Let's bring him in. How's my Tom Kane?
It's not bad. It's not bad. It sounds like a blend of me and Sean Connery.
It is. Well, you do have kind of a Sean Connery thing. You did.
Yeah,
You've done some Sean Connery, have you? Did you do like ADR or something for him?
I did for a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and yeah. Do you want to hear my Sean Connery story?
Yes.
I was hired to be the live announcer for the AFI tribute to Sean Connery. And the entire evening, every single person that got up there, of course, tried to do their best Sean Connery voice, and 99% of them really blew at it. Afterwards, they had a party up at Spago. It was at the Kodak Theater, and then so I go up there to the party, and all the VIPs are in their little area, and various folks around, and I'm just one of the help. So I went up to the bar to get a beer, or in my case back then a rum and Diet Coke. And there's a guy next to me waiting in line, and the bartendress was probably a 23-year-old, model that was doing this to survive. And just as she's like turning to get our order, up walks this nice balding mustachioed gentleman, and it's Sean. And apparently, again, he's apparently not really full of himself, because he just kind of got tired of sitting with the VIPs and was wandering around and wanted something to drink.
Well, that's what I was thinking. They would have him, quarantined somewhere with like 1,000, bodyguards and whatever, especially being the man of the evening.
Well, they didn't have to do many bodyguards because this was a private thing, but the no public was allowed. But they did, exactly. They had like the hoi polloi up in the rope-off area, and it was Spielberg and George Lucas, and George I knew, Spielberg I only met once, but but I wasn't part of that elite crowd where they brought drinks to me. So I was at the bar. There's a guy over there, and then up walks Sean Connery, and the woman behind the bar goes, "Okay, you're up. What do you want?" And I went, "Oh no, please." Get him.
After you, I insist.
She goes, she just got like frustrated, and she turned to the other guy that was standing there, and she goes, "Okay, what do you want?" And he goes, "Oh, well, I'll," she goes, "What do you want?" And he goes, "I'll have a Bud Light, whatever." And so she starts doing that. And then she again turns to me and goes, "So what do you want?" I said, "No, it's really him. It's his." And she cuts me off, and she goes, What do you want? You're next." And I went, and he's just waving. He's like, don't worry about it. And I realized she has no idea who he is, because she wasn't at the show. She works for Spago up there, or whatever Wolfgang's place is at the Kodak, or now, what's it called now? The Dolby Theater, because Kodak's bankrupt. But anyway, I realized she has no idea who this guy is. She doesn't know this party's for him. And he just kind of waves me off, and I'm just like going, "Okay, I'll have a rum and Coke." And then she turns to him and he goes, "I understand you've got like a 1952 Lafrague something. It's, probably some $1,000 bottle of scotch." And she goes, "Oh yeah, it's up here. If it's, only for, whoever asked for it." He goes, "Well, that would be me." And she's like, "Okay," and pours it over a little ice. She hands it to him, and the guy with the Budweiser goes, "Aren't you going to get a vodka martini?" And he gets about that far. And
God.
He goes, "Oh, bloody hell." And I go, "What?" He goes, "If I had $100 for every time someone said that to me, I'd be richer than I am." And the guy kind of like slunk away, and I just kind of laughed, and I said, yeah, it was pretty bad. Everybody in the whole night was trying to do your voice. And he goes, oh, you have
Yeah.
no idea. I'll be taking a leak in a bathroom, and some guy will recognize me in Botswana, and he'll be like, you want a martini, shake it, not stirred. And he's like, well, as soon as I shake it off, I'll answer you. But I said, well, the funny part is he goes, what were you doing in this soiree? And I said, I was the announcer. He goes, oh, the fellow coming over I said, yeah. He goes, the voice of God. I said, well, kind of. I said, that would have been James Earl Jones actually tonight. But he goes, I said, well, I've been paid to do some of your stuff. And he goes, for what? And I said, well, the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And he goes, oh, that piece of shite, And I went, ugh. And he goes, well, what did you do? And I said, well, I replaced a couple lines. And he goes, well, let's hear them. I go, what?
Oh, no pressure there. No
He
pressure
goes,
at all.
no, exactly. He goes, all night long, everybody's been trying to do my voice, and you've actually been paid, so let's hear it. And I went, oh, God, no. I said, I need headphones. And he goes, come on. And I went, so I leaned over and literally was like practically kissing his ears because it was so loud. I was like going, right up there going, the league is set. The game is on. I'm waiting to be impressed. So, and which were a couple of the lines I did.
Listen, that's only a little tiny bit creepy. Just a little.
But, yeah, very creepy. But get this. So I do this for the man himself, and he turns and he looks at me and he goes, it's not bad. I've heard better.
Wow. Well, listen, not bad. I'll take that's not bad. I guess.
I know, but I've heard better. But
anyway, man, it's one thing when you do impressions, and I've talked about impressions before, and it's so often these impressions just become impressions of impressionists.
Right.
And so they kind of get like watered down, and then they sound nothing like it's just like when someone's drawing a caricature, and it's just so far off. So if you're doing that, and it's the guy's actually there, the difference, that chasm between how they actually talk and how everybody, kind of perceives them comically to talk must be, huge. But yikes.
Of course, the problem that night was he was hoarse, and he's getting a lot older. He's done. I mean, he's completely retired and has been for a long time. And that night, he sounded more like this. He's like, yeah, the game is set. His voice was very weak, and it was very raspy and very old. And, so he didn't sound as much like Sean as he normally did. But
you just tell him, listen, your Sean's all right. I've heard better.
Yeah, your Sean, you know what? If I'd have had half a brain in my head, that's what I would have said. Well, tonight, your Sean wasn't bad. But okay, I made a joke about James Earl Jones being the voice of God that night. Everyone was trying to do Sean Connery, except up walks, he goes, I'm going, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. James Earl Jones, So he comes out in his tux, and he's got his, glasses on, and his hair's all kind of white now, and he leans forward with, of course, flawless mic technique. I saw him actually look at the mic. He's like, okay, I know what this one is, and I know I have to get this close. So he leans forward and he goes, there's something about that voice. It was just perfect, like Darth Vader. And everybody just cracked up, started cheering.
Listen, you're no slouch. But to introduce, as a voice talent, to introduce James Earl Jones even has got to be kind of like, just kind of a weird thing, he's one of, probably 4 or 5, ever really, where when, when you say his name, people don't, obviously he's an on-camera actor, but I don't think people go there first. They go to the voice, that's the first thing that they think of is, so that's,
well, and he was we had the same agent for about 10 years, and he was there once in a while, and no joke, the first time I met him, and people have joked about this around the agency back then. He goes, you could feel him talking before you could hear him talking. I walked around the corner and I just got this sense of there's this basso rumble.
And then you look at the glass of water like in Jurassic Park, and it's he's here.
Yeah, but exactly, and he was the nicest guy in the world, and he said something one time that just kind of blew everybody away. That when he did that movie with Robert Duvall, where he found out they were half brothers, you know, a white guy and a black guy in the South, um, and he stuttered. Well, that wasn't an affectation. He had a horrible stuttering problem as a child, and the way he overcame it was over enunciating everything. And that's how he got that very characteristic. He like really does a lot of mouth movement. He goes, "Hello, I'm James Earl Jones." And he does that sort of thing because that's how he stops from stuttering. And when he did the movie with Robert Duvall, go look for a clip of it on the YouTubes. But you can hear it. He stutters, but he says that's what I naturally do if I don't concentrate, if I don't think. So
Really?
Yeah, and it's sort of a shocking thing to see, someone like James Earl Jones who's going, I don't, and it's like, and you realize from what he said, that's real. This is CNN.
Yeah.
It's the put on to some degree. So
and again, from such an iconic voice, to think that there would be anything other than, perfection from that is,
exactly.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So yeah, he's, well, and again, I laughed when he said that because I've used that term. It's a put on. And that's honestly, it's why I work so much. The vast majority of the people that do voiceover work outside of animation, pretty much their voice is their voice. They have some leeway, but like the 35 of us that do all the movie trailers, 33 of them sound exactly the same, and they're all trying to imitate Don LaFontaine, and it's all the inner world. Well, these guys are all former FM jocks, and they all kind of have that natural voice. And the reason they got into trailers is because they figured out the secret formula to read things in the very artificial way trailers sound. But the most of the animation people, they come from stand-up comedy and a lot of on-camera actors that are comedians and do silly voices. But for me, I don't have any of those voices. Again, what you're hearing right now, nobody ever hires me for this. This is just me, being me. Everything else I do is a fake. My movie trailers are just as much a character voice as
Listen, man,
as Yoda or Ackbar.
I respect your work very much, but what is that? You've got this you came up with this thing, and I've heard it from you from a while. I said, man, did he just start doing this relatively recently? But no, you've been doing it for a long time. It's this kind of like transatlantic style.
Yeah.
Like it seemed like you went British, but then you pulled it back and then some stuff, I guess they want you to go kind of full Brit.
Well,
it's like a kind of, would you consider that like a transatlantic? Hold on, let's play a clip because this is what you do in a lot of these trailers.
Okay.
700 years into the future, mankind will leave our planet, leaving Earth's cleanup in the hands of one incredible machine. His name is Wally. After all these years, he's developed one little glitch. A personality.
So
So that one was pretty full on British.
That one went here.
Years.
Hold on, I've got a commercial clip. Let's see.
Introducing a new bathroom cleaner that works overtime, day and night, and day and night, and day and night. New Scrubbing Bubbles Extender Clean. A powerful sprayer that lets the bubbles do the cleaning. Just spray and wipe. Then let the water-activated formula take care of your bathroom.
Let's go!
It's got kind of like an old-timey announcer thing.
Well, that's exactly what that was.
Yeah.
It's funny because a few people picked it up. That's the same voice that I use for the opening of the Clone Wars. The opening narrator of the Clone Wars is Empire at War as the planet Ryloth falls under attack. Jedi Master Anakin Skywalker. Well, and that was, scrubbing bubbles. We keep your filthy toilet bowl clean, So it's basically that's just an old newsreel guy.
Yeah, I always call that the humanity thing. Like, the humanity, that kind of deal.
If you just pitch it up, if you just take the pitch up, it's instead of, we're here at the Scrubbing Bubble, it's like, we're here at the Scrubbing Bubbles Lab, all the humanity, that's the basically same guy.
You hear everybody, in voiceover, it's one of those things that you hear over and over, or at least, in the past, like, 10 years or so about how you have to be, conversational and real, and the death of the announcer, and nobody's an announcer anymore. And I mean, you're bucking the trend. You're not only going, announcer like, from 20 years ago, you're going from announcer from like 60, 80 years ago.
Oh. Well, that is true. I mean, I've got a whole demo reel up on my site that just says it's just Mr. Film Strips March of Time. And I book a ton of that stuff. It's just, it's a couple voices that I've developed over the decades that sound really close to, again, they're all variations on a theme. I mean, if I take it a little more 1970s, it's Gary Owens, the fickle finger of fate award goes to beautiful downtown Burbank. And if I drop, if I flatten it out and take it back a couple days, a couple of decades earlier, it's, this is Edward R. Murrow coming to you live from London. The Blitz here is, so it's all of a family. It's just a matter of, putting a little mustard here or there. But yeah, the voice people hear most, and the kind of thing I do for probably half of the movie trailers I do is what would be a recent one? Sherlock Gnomes, let's say. Johnny Depp is Sherlock Gnomes. Starts Friday at theaters everywhere. Rated PG-13. Or Tim Allen is the Shaggy Dog 4 from Walt Disney Pictures. Starts Friday at that.
So it's got an announcer thing, but then for that stuff, you got that going down, like adding that downward thing in the rumble at the end, kind of a la, trailer Don type of thing. Where you go, you've got that thing at the end where it just makes it sound more like like a trailer, I guess.
Well, and I can't compete with the big dogs in the trailer world, the Ashtons and the John Baileys and all the guys that.
Well, fuck that, man. You are, because half the time you turn on the TV and you hear a trailer now, and you go, it's friggin' Tom again, man.
I do a minute fraction of what's out there. I mean, what the big money is if you land like the next Batman campaign or the Avengers or something. Most of my stuff is more niche things, like well, some of it's niche. I just, I've done all the most of the theatrical and TV stuff for J.K. Rowling's Fantastic Beasts, for instance, and I did some Harry Potter stuff. Later, the Potter stuff was full on British, of course.
Sure.
And the funny part was we originally, somebody in the hierarchy said, well, JK really liked the voice that he did for that. Let's have him read some of the stuff for the Fantastic Beasts. And we got like 2 or 3 trailers done. And apparently in a meeting over in London, JK was reviewing stuff. And all of a sudden, and this is like the 3rd time they'd all listened to these things, she apparently smacked herself in the head. She goes, what on earth are we doing? And everyone's like, what's wrong, Mum? She's like, well, the point of a beast is that it's in the United States. It's America. Why are we doing a British fellow? She goes, I just realized we've been listening to the, and they're like, oh God, you're right. Well, so they came back to me and said, everyone realized that was really dumb. The whole point of Fantastic Beasts, it's the American version,
Well,
like, yeah,
wait,
okay.
I actually do a great American.
Well, I did. Well, yeah, and that's basically what the producer said. He said, we know you do. We hire you a lot because you do everything under the sun, and so he said, well, let's come up with something that's American, but not just a standard trailer thing. So we came up with something that was just the minutest hint of almost Midwest or Western. And like you were saying, much more conversational, much less trailer guy. So it was, let me think, there's like, long before Hogwarts, a wizard came to the new country known as America. The American Indian, this, and it's a world where, aurors protect the innocent and people do this. And there was a young man named, Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. Starts Friday at theaters everywhere. And she loved it. And apparently it wasn't until later they said, She goes, who is that fellow? I go, that's the same guy. And she was like, what? No, the other chap was British. And they're like, no.
Well, have you had training to pull off that British thing? Because, you know, every American voice actor, for some reason, thinks they could do British, and they just destroy. It's always like some, like they sound like some freaking like chimney sweep, you know? It's always awful.
Well, and any time, you know, I get asked a million times a year to listen to people's demo reels, and I always say the same thing. I'm like, if you have a British dialect that is good enough to fool a native Britisher, then put it on. If you haven't actually in your life fooled a half a dozen British people and have a conversation with them for several minutes and they have no idea where you're from, then it's good enough to put on there. If it's anything short of that, if it's just your mom telling you it's the great British accent, or you think it sounds like so-and-so, don't, because the real people that know real British accents are just going to exactly what you do. Just go, whoa, what was that?
Yeah. I don't know why. I don't know why they think it's just easy to nail. I think just because I think that in many ways, when it comes to accents, Americans have a bit of a tin ear. Maybe just because we're so full of ourselves, or you know, I don't. Sometimes I don't know the difference between friggin' British and Australian, or you know, or anything else. But
and I don't do. You know, there are some people that study their dialects, and they can give you not just, you know, upper class British, lower class Cockney, but you know, they can give you, you know, the West End of Gloucester. Well, okay, I always say, okay, well, gee, I've been doing this for 40 years, and half of my work is characters, and no one's ever asked for that, so why learn it? You know, it's like, you know, I get people seriously all the time. They're like, oh, I do all these dialects. So I said, well, what do you mean all these? Oh, I can do Ukrainian. I'm like, is that different than Russian? And they're like, oh, yeah. I'm like, well, that'll be absolutely useless. You know, I don't say anything that rude, but it's like, and the other thing is, I always like, you know, don't waste your time. If you're putting together a reel, it is a waste of your time and effort. If you live in Kansas City or even, you know, Albany, New York, or, you know, if you concentrate on doing all these amazing, wonderful dialects, okay, I'm one of the most working dudes in the commercial industry. I'm known for my dialects. I might be able to attribute 5%, maybe 20% if you count some of the movie trailer things that you're not sure where I'm from, of my income to dialect work. 90% of all the voiceover guys that pay their mortgages with this stuff, they do it just talking. You know, they're the guy next door. I mean, think about it. Listen to the radio. Just drive around, you know, the next time you're in a car for 30 minutes, listen to the commercials. And I'll bet you that you won't find, out of an hour's worth of spots on a radio station, you might run across one British accent in an hour.
Sure. So well, that's, you know, that's great advice. That's the advice I always give too. And I used to hear it even more. People go, oh, you're an agent. You know what's booking. What's booking? Tell me what's booking. You have a television. Like, turn it on. Did you hear that spot? Somebody booked it.
They got paid for it.
That was the, like, if you want to know what's in, there's no, like, I'm not hiding the secret sauce. Turn on the radio. Turn on the TV, man. You're going to see.
One of the other things that people make, I don't know if you want me to get into advice here, but one of the other major mistakes I get when people send a reel that they're specifically, you know, I'm always like, if you're going to make a reel, make it commercials. If you've got a British accent that can fool me, then maybe put one chunk on there of 10 seconds of that. But otherwise, it should be just you talking, you being intimate, you being happy, you being deadpan, but still you. Because you don't want to get to the end of a commercial reel and have the producer go, well, what the hell was that? Who was that guy? I heard about 12 different people in there. So my advice is always, first of all, it should never be more than 90 seconds long. If you can't show a producer what you can do in 90 seconds, they're never going to hear the last 30 or 40 or extra minute or two, because it's going to go delete.
I never make it to the end, even on a 60. You've made a decision in the first couple seconds, usually, if you're going to keep listening.
Pretty much. No, and I hate to say it, but I'll listen to someone's entire reel just to give them feedback. But I know within 30 seconds whether this person has an ice cube's chance in hell of doing anything anytime soon.
Sure.
If ever.
Sure. And then they obsess about the last spot. Oh, man, that's gravy. You got your first 3 is where you got to kill them.
Yeah. I know. You know what? That's perfect. That's exactly what I say. I put your first, second, third spots 1, 2, and 3, and your fourth best one is the last, and everything else is really kind of unnecessary. I mean, I'm serious. I say 90 seconds, and honestly, that's being really generous. If it was me, and again, my demo reels, I don't even know how long they are, because quite frankly, I didn't put them together, and I mean, I haven't updated the things in 10 years, I think. So I'm very, fortunate in that regard. But I still audition. I mean, and that leads me to my next piece of advice. If you have a good demo reel and you're working and you're making a little money here at commercials, then you've got what you need to know to realize you have some talent and you might be able to compete in this incredibly competitive field. So if you want to then start branching out and saying, well, I also do character voices, and you have access to audition for character voices, which pretty much you don't if you don't live in LA or have an agent in LA, then I'll go ahead and put together a character reel. Major mistake, 3/4 of the reels I get is they put together 3 minutes of them recreating SpongeBob, Tony the Tiger, Fred Flintstone, Ed, Ed and Eddie, Yoda, whatever. Okay, why? I'm not dead. If they need Yoda, they're not going to have an audition. They're going to book me. I've been doing it for 20 some years. They have a Fred Flintstone. God knows they have Tom Kane still doing SpongeBob quite happily. So if they tomorrow need to do another episode of SpongeBob, they're not going to listen to demo reels and see if we can find a good SpongeBob, as long as Tom sounds like him. So all you can do when you fill up an animation reel, a character reel with sound-alikes, is just show that you're really not as good as the originals, because I can guarantee you, your SpongeBob is not better than Tommy's, and it's not as good as Tommy's.
Now, so this is coming from a guy who's taken over for some other people, so that's saying something.
I have, but I don't pretend that you can lay me up. I do ADR work for a lot of Morgan Freeman's trailers and some other projects, and when you listen to it, people think, yeah, that's Morgan Freeman. If you butt me up against Morgan Freeman, you'll be like, well, no, that's Morgan Freeman. That's a good imitation.
Hold on.
Maybe it's that lucky jersey. Maybe it's that extra inch of widescreen. Or maybe it's that last ticket for one more person who wished just a little bit harder. That's the thing about this game.
This is you on this, not Morgan Freeman, which is pretty amazing. Now,
and that was a scratch that we did for Visa. We did a number. For years I dummy all of the spots they do for his work for a couple accounts. And then
tell people who don't understand it, how does that work? Why did they need you to do him when they're going to be using him?
Well, because when you're dealing with a commercial that will cost $1 million in production, and then they're buying television time that's $1 million to $2 million every time they run it. There's a lot of cutting, a lot of editing, a lot of changes, a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and they probably make 25 different versions of that spot with 25 slightly different scripts before they finally settle on what you see in the Super Bowl or wherever. Well, Morgan, they're paying him millions a year to do these spots, but you don't have the man for 3 hours. He comes in expecting this to be the final thing. He reads it 4 times. As long as the words fit about the right spot, they go, "Thank you very much, Mr. Freeman," and he goes home. So
it's good to be the king.
Yes, well, it is. And that's true of all the celebs. At some point, somebody's doing a scratch track for all those things. It's just in my case, they were so concerned that the test audiences and stuff think that was Morgan. They found out that I'm the guy that does some of his other stuff for movie trailers. So they've been using me for years. And that's how they arrive at whatever the final script is. And then he comes in, reads what I do 3 times, and goes home. And he adds several zeros to his fee than what I get, but that's okay.
We were, we were going to do a thing not a while back. I don't know what it was like they were doing some sort of video games or something, and they said, "Oh, this guy's a great Morgan Freeman. We want him to do Morgan, blah blah blah." And I have some other people that have done ADR and stuff for him. There's, we want, and you said, "Well, yeah, no, sure, just give us all the legal paperwork, make sure he's, his people have signed off on it." Yeah, and then and you go, "Listen, man, you never see it. It never comes." I said, "I don't know. These guys had millions invested in this thing. There was no clearances. We never got paperwork, and that was it. We never heard from him again."
No, and I get that all. I mean, seriously,
we got paid for the scratch or whatever we did. That was it, right?
Oh, I get. Well, and it's funny because I've gotten him a lot of work. There have been at least a couple dozen times over the last 4 or 5 years where some very large client, I get approached by the ad agency, and of course their first reaction is, "Well, we'll have Tom do it, for 10 cents on the dollar." And of course I'm like, "Well, no, I don't need to get sued by Morgan, to make a few $100 on your whatever your thing is." So, but what ends up happening though, and it's happened a few times, more than a few, is they will sell the client on upping their budget dramatically, and they say, "Well, how do you, here's how it would sound with announcer A, B, and C. Here's Morgan," and they play it, and the client thinks it's Morgan Freeman, and they're like, "Oh my God, it's incredible. Well, how much more would that cost?" "Well, that'll cost you another $1 million." But
brace yourself.
Yeah, but if this is a national network advertiser that's spending $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 on every single time they run it on ABC or whatever, then they're like, "Okay, yeah, how much?" "Yeah," and then Morgan gets the job for $1 million, and I got 800 or something.
Send him a bill.
Well, it's okay.
Let's talk about you, Tom. Let's talk about Tom Kane, because if we don't do the little blah blah backstory stuff, it's boring as shit. Then everybody gets mad. I did 4 seconds of research. You started, but I thought this was interesting. You started as you were a kid, man. You were basically just hit puberty, and then you started. Well, that's what happens with all the dudes anyway. You hit it, and then like your aunts are like, "Oh, your voice is so nice," and then you're like, "Wait a second." But you, as a freaking kid, man, and you said, "Yeah, this is pretty good," and then you just started cold calling. What?
Yeah, well, it was 1977. Star Wars had just come out, and I was 15 years old, and it was Kansas City in the summertime in 1977. No computers, no nothing. We had 3 TV stations, and one of them was a UHF, and in black and white. I don't know what that meant, but anyway, it was 105 degrees and 188% humidity, and I just was bored out of my skull. And of course, back then, and to a great degree to this day, all the local advertisers, in a medium market like Kansas City, it's all FM disc jockeys, or it's someone that works for the stations. But the end result is that everything sounds like the Waterbed Gallery. Come on down this Sunday, and that was really true back in the day. And I did, even as a teenager, I did dialects, a number of which were good enough to fool people from that country, because I lived overseas for a while and was proud of that. So anyway, the bottom line is I just thought it'd be fun to hear myself on TV. I honestly had no idea people got paid for it. I'd never heard the term voiceover, and I just started calling local advertisers. And of course, I was 15. I had no sense of propriety I'm sorry, I hear my dog barking. I had no sense of, propriety or tact or understanding that, this guy who had the local car dealership was really proud of his cheesy commercial. And so I just started calling the local, I went to this thing called anyone under 30, there was this thing called the Yellow Pages. And anyway, I would find their phone numbers and call them. And of course, I was like, "Yeah, I heard your commercial and it really sucked." And, they would hang up on me. And
it's a good sales pitch.
Oh, yeah, I heard the commercial really sucks, and I can do something more interesting. And one day I heard a PSA for the American Cancer Society. It was absolutely god awful. I eventually said to them at one point, I said, "Yeah, it sounded like you took a Radio Shack cassette player and put it in front of the receptionist and said, 'Here, read this.'" And it turns out that's kind of what they had done. But I got a call an hour later from the ad agency in Kansas City that was the largest one in town at the time, and they were doing all the stuff for the American Cancer Society for free. And they said, "Gosh, yeah, we've got our big annual fundraiser thing that we're doing a spot for, and we're recording it this Thursday. And man, we'd love to have a professional voiceover guy. If you donate, that's awesome." Well, donate went, right over my head, and professional voiceover guy saying, right over my head. But I said, "Yeah, sure." So I wrote down the address, and Thursday comes around. My daddy had to drive me. And we're in the lobby of a studio they've paid some good money for. And this guy comes out and starts talking to my dad. And after, 10 seconds, my dad kind of waves him off and goes, no, that's who you were talking to. And, I'm standing there with my fringy cut off jeans and my white Stan Smith shoes that were half green from mowing lawns for $1 a piece. And the guy is like, "Have you done this before?" And I'm like, "Well, no." And he goes, "Oh, God." And I said, "Well, I can't be any worse than what you had. It sounded terrible." and he goes, "Oh, you don't understand. It's like
you're pretty opinionated little freaking teenager, man.
I was a teen. And
this is all just awful. What are you people doing? Good Lord.
You know what? Honestly, I'm the poster child for, what now is called ADD. Back then, there was no name for it. But my first grade teacher actually tied me to my chair with jump ropes. And I found out that I could entertain people while tied to my chair with jump ropes by doing silly voices. And I turned that into a career. But yeah, no joke. Teachers probably wouldn't do that today. But anyway, so we walk back. The engineer takes me straight in the booth. He sets the microphone. He puts headphones on me. And I see the guy that had come out to get me was on the other side of the glass with the creative director, and he's getting his butt chewed. All I see is, and the other guy's going. And I'm reading the script, and I just I leaned forward, and I said, "Do you want this in some kind of accent?" And I did, because I didn't know the term dialect. And the guy, the creative director guy, hits the talk back, and he goes, "What?" And I said, "Well, I was thinking this would sound good like the Pepperidge Farms guy." And he goes, you can talk like a 75-year-old man from New England?" And I went, "Well, yeah, sure, can everybody?" And he goes, "Well, let's hear that." So I got, you know what? You never forget your first. I still have, every weekend, a couple dozen Kansas City families have a couple dozen garage sales. But on July 1st and 2nd, 1,000 Kansas City families are going to have just one garage sale, a very big garage sale, a sale so big, as a matter of fact, it'll make the walls of the Glenwood Manor Convention Hall bulge. We call it the Kansas City Garage Sale. All the proceeds go to the American Cancer Society. And all the bargains, well, those go to you.
This is the copy from 40 years ago, and you
40
remember?
40 years ago, I remember it exactly. And,
Good Lord, I don't remember what I was doing 40 minutes ago.
Well, no, I don't either. But that one stuck. And I look up, and both of the guys are both going, "Yeah, that. So I read it 2 more times. They were all smiles. We go away. Well, a week later, another ad agency apparently had called them and said, "We heard that's a local guy, and we'd like to talk to him about, whatever." And so my second job, a week later, same thing happened. My dad drives me down. They come up to him, and he's like, "No, it's him." And I had to prove that was me. They're like, I read 10 seconds, like, "Okay, I guess that's you." And that's exactly how I sounded at 15. And this time, though, I didn't know it was a paid job. So they're like, "Oh, well, your dad's going to have to sign the paperwork." And paperwork, okay. So he's filling stuff out, and all of a sudden, I'm looking at the scripts. There were 6 TV spots, or 5 or 6, something like that. And all of a sudden, my dad's filling stuff out, and all of a sudden he goes, Tommy. And I go, "What?" And he goes, they're paying you for this." I went, "Oh, it's 1977, and I'm 15, so I'm thinking $20. And I said, "Well, how much?" And he goes, "They're paying you a lot." And I'm thinking, $50? I said, "Well, how much they paying me?" And he goes, "They're paying you $1,100. And honest to God, in my brain, what went through my head at that moment, well, is it 11 or 100? And then I went, "Oh my God, I'm getting a car."
Yeah, man. Well, at that age, forget it. That's freaking big money,
So
man.
I got a 1972 Ford Gran Torino 4-barrel, lay a scratch from here to Denver, man. It was amazing.
You know what's sad? That was $1,100 back in 1977.
Yeah.
Today, now it pays $1,000. That's how bad it's gotten in voiceover. It's gone back. It's going back to pre-77 freaking rates.
Well, no, and it's true. I mean, this was five. It must have been six, because it was less than $200 per spot. It was like $175 or something back then, or I don't know what, but yeah, I mean, to me, and I came out of there just shaking my head, going, "This is impossible." I mean, that's more money than I'd ever imagined in my life. My dad even was like, "What the?" He's like, that's what he made in a month or something back then, and I was like, okay, I just found out I want to do something in life.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what drew you to it? Well, there was this paycheck.
Big paycheck.
Freaking awesome.
And I was 15.
Yeah. So, and also amazing. This is in freaking Kansas, right? This is the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
You're a dang. Listen, we're not going to talk about where you live, but you are decidedly not in Los Angeles. Like, your home is not in LA. And every talent in the world, everybody wants to break into animation. They all want to do character stuff, like we were saying before. And then they all say, I guess I have to move to LA. And half the time it's like, yeah, kind of, maybe. But you, how was that? Because you did your time and then you were able to get out, or how did that all happen?
As much as I'd like to encourage people otherwise, if you want to break into animation from scratch, you have to be in LA.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about it. There's only two places in the Western speaking world that make cartoons, and that's Los Angeles and a little bit up in Canada. And the vast majority of it is in LA. And if you're not there, if you're not physically showing up for the auditions, it's just not going to happen. And again, it's because, and it's true of me and everybody else, we're all replaceable. If I got hit by a bus tomorrow, in a week and a half, they'd have another Yoda and another Ackbar, and most people wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And that's not true, obviously, in the on-camera world. If you need Brad Pitt, you need Brad Pitt. But if you just need someone's voice, and it's a character voice, then that's a different world.
But you did your time, and you were able to get out. And now, but they're not every time they need Yoda, they're not dragging you in, right? They're actually allowing somebody outside of the county to record.
Well, only for the things that aren't feature films. Any feature film work, I do have to go back to LA because they want me on it used to be Fox, now it's Burbank, Disney Burbank. But it's just, and that's for security reasons. They'll send me a script for Clone Wars, or a game, or a toy, or something, or one of the rides at the new park in the Disney parks. I'm all over the new Galaxy's Edge, but the something like that, they have no problem sending stuff to me. But the anything to do with the feature film, they fly me out there, and every page on my script has a watermark on it that says Tom Kane, and they literally come by and collect. They take it out of your hands.
Has the hotel, they put you up in a nice place, or?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Freaking DoubleTree. Okay.
So you work for Disney.
We do work for Disney, actually. Okay, so all right, let's talk. You're already plugging yourself. You're doing my job. Let's talk about games first, because you've done a ton of games. You've done Call of Duty. You've done Final Fantasy. You're in Fortnite. Do you believe how huge that freaking Fortnite thing is now, man?
No,
Yikes.
I did not know what it was.
Yeah, nobody did. We know some other people that were like, I don't know, it's a thing. Yeah, it's a freaking thing, man. My son would go nuts over that. You've done like 1,000 Star Wars games, 1,000 Lord of the Rings games. So you did a bunch of games. You continue to do games.
Not as many.
It's because who do we have? Last time we had Dave Fenoy, and we were bitching about how it doesn't pay anything. So,
it's not. And with me, it's not just the pay. I would do them just because it's good PR and it's good, popular stuff, and it keeps you connected to the latest generation. But for me, it's just a problem because I work every day. And I've never smoked. I don't have those, cords of steel like the inner world, guys do. And in all video games, most of them are, it's varying levels of screaming and dying. It's okay.
Again, let me tell you, it's some of the hardest voiceover work out there, man.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. And they make $1 billion on these things daily, and then the pay is not commensurate with it. I don't know.
No. Oh gosh, no. But it's like, I can't. It's first thing my agent, someone will say, well, we'd like Tom Kane to do this part or whatever, and the first thing they say is how much screaming and dying. And if there's lots of screaming and dying, they just pass on it because, for me to make whatever the fee is for one video game session, if it costs me one movie trailer, at the end of the day, because I sound terrible, I'm raspy and whatever, I just lost money on the whole day. So, it's just not worth it. So, I still do all the Star Wars stuff because most of the characters I do in Star Wars are not screaming and dying. Yoda, Ackbar, Qui-Gon, there's some fight stuff with Qui-Gon, but not, it's not that tough. The only screaming and dying that I still do regularly is the Call of Duty because I just absolutely love the character. I'm Takeo Masaki, who's a World War I Japanese, Imperial Japanese soldier, and it's all the weird stuff that's in Call of Duty. But I get to be
you've done multiple titles, haven't you, on Call of Duty?
Oh yeah, probably. Well, it's somewhere. I think I've been in all of them. Not necessarily as Takeo. Those are Black Ops and Zombies and I don't know what else. But I think the very first Call of Duty. It was Call of Duty World War II, or then there was a Vietnam. This is back in the '90s. But but I didn't become like a main character until Takeo. But he's just one of my favorite because he's a very complicated character and it's just a great voice. It's like. It's probably not politically correct anymore because I'm a white guy, but he's just got a very imperial Japanese, I fight for the glory of the emperor. This weapon has no honor. It's that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, they might not have cast you if that was today.
Not anymore. Well, no. I was one of the original back in when they were casting Samurai Jack. It was kind of down to me and the fellow who did a coup, and they were leaning toward me to be the voice of a coup, the villain. And then suddenly somebody realizes, like, well, wait a minute, this is a little weird. We got Phil Lamar, who's a black guy, being Samurai Jack, and then we would have a coup, the main villain, who would be this white guy, and we'd have like neither of the main lead characters would be Asian at all. They're like, yeah, that's a little much. So they hired the other guy that was.
Well, that's also the beauty of voiceover, but
right.
Still.
Well, right. No, I mean, I love telling the story about. I talk to schools and stuff. I say voiceover work really was probably the first, almost completely integrated aspect of the entertainment industry, at least in that realm. Because if you could do the voice, you can do the voice. And the example I always love, I said, there was a moment where, Fred Flintstone and Barney Rubble, Barney Rubble's this little 5'0" blonde hair, blue eyed character. And Fred, of course, is this big hulking, oaf. And the voice of Fred Flintstone, this, hey, Barney, get your hands off me, fruity pebbles, was James Arnold Taylor, who is about a 5'4" little blonde hair, blue eyed guy. And the voice of Barney Rubble, who's the little blonde guy, was Kevin Michael Richardson, who's a 5'10", 350-pound black guy, looks like, Morpheus. And he's doing this voice. Hey, Fred. I got your fruity pebbles, Fred. And I'm like, you look into this, you're like going, so you got this little guy going, Barney, and this huge black guy going, hey, Fred, it's your fruity pebble. I just sat there going, oh, God, this is lovely. This is perfect. And that's the beauty of it is it doesn't matter whether you're tall, short, thin, fat, man, woman, even. I mean, most of the little boys you hear in cartoons are done by middle-aged women. So.
Well, you've done quite a lot of cartoons. You were Darwin on the Wild Thornberrys. You were in the Powerpuff Girls, which was freaking huge, man. Him and some other characters.
It's still on. We just did another 70 episodes over the last year and a half. It's incredible.
Monkey Fist and Kim Possible. Kim Possible is huge. Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, Mr. Harriman. You were let's talk about it, which is all huge stuff, and I don't mean to gloss over it because I'm sure there's going to be 100 hits on this thing from those fans. But I'm a huge Archer fan. So you were on.
Oh, yes.
What's the story? It was George Coe, and then what happened? He passed away, and then you took that role. How did that work?
George was ill, and we knew it wasn't, going to get better. And so they were, trying to figure out how to replace him. And they did something that was really amazing. They, these guys were so cool. George was, the last period of time, he wasn't really aware of what was going on, but he was watching the show. And they didn't actually, as far as I was told, I'm not sure, I have to look it up, but I was told they didn't actually credit me for the first few so that he wouldn't know that it wasn't him.
Wow.
And that's been corrected on IMDb and stuff. But I thought that was just amazingly cool, if that's in fact what they did. But I was told that was going to be the plan. But so they just, same thing, I just got a reference, and I didn't even know it was George. And they just said, can you match this? Because the same people knew that I could match things. I'm a good mimic. There's not much original in my repertoire. I just recycle the stuff I watched, when I was a kid, reruns of all the golden era of television from the 50s and 60s. But yeah, I matched it, and I guess it was good enough because that's what I've been the guy since. But yes, everyone's favorite 85-year-old heroin addict.
Well, you do a lot of family stuff, and then you go over to that thing. But I don't think most people even realized, that the voice had changed. So you nailed it. You were Magneto. There was a Wolverine TV show. I think it was very short-lived, though, right? Where you were Magneto.
I've done Magneto for a couple, I've done. It's hard for me to remember, but I've done Magneto for a couple series. I did Iron Man and Ultron I did Ultron like 3 different series.
There was an Avengers show, but that was short-lived as well, I think.
Well,
maybe
yes,
it's you.
The one that was it's probably me. I'm the kiss of death for Marvel projects. But no, I did the funniest one was I did Iron Man. I was cast as Iron Man and Ultron in a movie, The Next Avengers, animated film. And I always say, like, yes, the first time I ever got to kick my own ass. But it was an odd one. But
okay, so let's talk about Yoda.
Yes.
Now, there's been a few different Yodas. Obviously, most famously, obviously, the guy who originated it, Frank Oz, who, and really, it sounds a lot like he's one of those guys that his stuff sounds familiar, and then you don't even think about it, and then you're like, Piggy and Yoda even sound kind of like in the same vein. But why you when Frank's still around? Frank, you were doing stuff even before Frank stopped. Like, you would do stuff, and then Frank would do stuff afterwards. Why?
I've been very lucky. There were a couple guys that did individual projects, between Frank and I, but pretty much everything for 20 some years has been me, with the exception of the 2 or 3 times Frank came out of retirement. But so I'm very happy that he decided he didn't want to do it anymore. But, no, what happened was, as Frank became a very successful director, he's been nominated, I think, for an Oscar at least once, maybe won one as a director.
So he's such a big. I mean, for you, obviously, it's like a massive, huge for any voiceover actor to be Yoda is like a pinnacle of your career. And this guy's such a big shot. He's like, I don't need to do that anymore.
Yeah, well, no, well, and again,
no,
I guess
thanks.
I can understand that. It's like once you've been nominated for an Oscar as best director, you don't show up the next day to be a voiceover guy for some other director, even if it's your friend George Lucas. It's like I'm sure there's some ego involved there, and probably justified. So he just stopped doing all voiceover work. I mean, they had to find replacements for all of his Sesame Street stuff. He was Miss Piggy and Oscar and Fozzie Bear.
Yeah.
And so they had to find replacements for all of those.
To varying degrees of success, some of those other ones. But the Yoda, hold on, let's hear some Yoda.
What? Okay.
Yoda, my old friend, you have come at last.
This is, I hope it's you and not him. This is you, with Liam Neeson.
It is?
It is.
Losing my mind, I am not?
No, my friend, no.
Why have you brought me here?
Follow the light. The light will be your guide.
Well, this is from one of the last seasons. Well, now there's a new season coming out.
Strong this planet is with the Force.
It is one.
Wow. Huh. So it's, Liz, I grew up, everybody, I mean, who's not dead now, basically grew up on, with Star Wars. So, and, you were saying, well, you were starting, I guess 77 was when the first one came out, and that's when you started doing voiceover. So that was whatever. But now you've got an just absolutely iconic voice that, that you've taken over for the most part. Is this a pressure-filled situation kind of thing, or did you just say, hey, I'm pretty good at it, so I'll do it? It's fun.
No,
was this kind of laissez-faire or what?
I never auditioned for it. It was the very first time I got cast, and as I say, since then, I think I'm the only one that's ever done it other than Frank. It was in the 90s, and Frank was off directing, I think it was Three Men and a Baby in New York City. And there was no technology where you could, talk there and record it in LA. And he was busy. He's a director. He's like, no, I'm not doing this. Well, I didn't know any of this. I'm there recording. Actually, the original stuff I started doing for Lucasfilm was some C-3PO. And
you were like AT-AT driver number 4, and you kind of you were doing a whole bunch of stuff for them, right? Before you kind of got in like Flynn.
But, well, we all voiceover people, we all, if we see other characters in scripts, we always just talk and try to imitate them and do what we do, because that's how we play. It's how we practice. And so I see 3PO and I'm trying to do a good 3PO, or I see Yoda and I try to read some of the lines as it, because, it's a fan thing. I'm just trying to.
You did 3PO on Robot Chicken, though, and on some games, didn't you?
I've done a whole bunch.
Hello, I'm C-3PO, human cyborg relations. And this is my counterpart. Shut up, I'm on a podcast. Oh dear.
And what I did know though is that Frank was off shooting a movie. So I'm sitting there, I'm TIE Fighter pilot number 3 or whatever, but then there's a Yoda line. So I was doing my best Yoda. Well, the director, a guy named Dara O'Farrell, a nice Irish lad, and who I've stolen his voice for a number of things. He was recording me just goofing around, walked into George's office a couple days later with a little Walkman thing, pressed play. And George is like, yeah, what? And he goes, well, that's the guy that's the sound alike for Anthony Daniels as 3PO. And he goes, that's not Frank? And he goes, no, that's the same guy that, and he goes, his entire response was, yeah, he sounds good. Use him. Well, that was 22 years ago.
What a rousing round of applause it was for you. Yeah, wow. Listen, don't.
Yeah, he sounds okay. Use him.
And what is it? 90% is showing up or something? What's the?
Well, I think so. Well, my favorite. I've got two.
I mean, obviously your Yoda doesn't suck, but what you're saying is basically you were there.
Yeah.
And you did it well, and then that was that. If you weren't there, they would have had a whole casting. It would have been a thing. It would have gone to 8,000 actors all over town, and you wouldn't have gotten it.
Me. It probably would have been someone who did a little bit better than me, because I've heard some really good ones. But no, one of my favorite George stories was. It was the same summer again, when I started doing voiceover work. It was the last day. It opened May 30th, 1977. It was my last day of 9th grade. And my friend and I are like flipping through the Kansas City Star, and we're looking at all the movie ads, big, black and white things. And I'm like, you want to see that? No, I don't want to see that. I say, no, and we turn the page, and there's the poster, the big Luke holding up the lightsaber, and Vader in the background, and Princess Leia looking slinky. And, Star Wars, a long time ago in a galaxy far. And my friend goes, well, that's interesting. We never heard of it. There was no press, no buzz at that point. And he goes, we could go see that. And my exact words were, I don't want to see that. That looks stupid.
You know what, man, you and a million other people, that from what I understood, the story was nobody was really behind it, and then it went over budget and whatever, they thought maybe it was going to be kind of a flop, and there was other things that came out at the time, and that's how George, because this was not really a thing at the time, was able to secure so much of the merchandising rights
Yes.
because they didn't think he was going to make, it was going to go in. So they kind of said, yeah, fine, take him. And then he wound up as a freaking trillionaire afterwards.
Yeah, no, it was going over budget. And basically what he worked out was cutting his pay and taking less percentage, whatever. But he got all the merchandising rights, as far as I know. And of course, they were laughing all the way in the boardroom. Guys, this stupid young filmmaker wants T-shirt sales? What the hell? Well, he wants a toy. Who's going to have a toy of anything than this thing?
Everyone on Earth.
Everyone on Earth. So, but yeah, one of the movie premieres. We're under the red carpet. Thank God we're inside the Egyptian where it's air conditioned. And I think it was Dave Filoni kept ribbing me, going, "You got to tell George. I'm like, no. And of course, George is like, "Tell me what?" I'm like, oh. So I tell him that same story about turning the page, and it's me saying, "Yeah, I don't want to see that. It looks stupid." And he just got this little smile on his face. He goes, "Well, do you feel differently now?" And I went, "Yeah, a little bit."
So you became it was Lucasfilm first, and then Disney still kept you on, and Disney used you for all kinds of stuff. We'll get into that soon. But George he obviously sold it off, and he got paid a quazillion dollars, but he's still around for these things, right? I mean, people are saying, he's not hands-on and he doesn't get any sort of say, he's just gone now.
Not in the circle I run in, because with a voice, the cartoon stuff, he's not there during a recording session for a cartoon thing. And in the feature films, by the time the voice stuff is being done, the main, the thing's written, it's been shot, it's being edited, it's almost finished. So, what involvement he has in the early stages, I don't know. I know, it's not anything like it used to be, because that's part of why the reason the guy sold the thing. He was done. He was, he's in his, I think he's 70 now. He probably, and he's recently married and he's had a kid.
He really believed in those prequels too, and people just destroyed him over that stuff. And regardless of how you feel about it, but I would think by that time he was done. People say, "He just wrapped it up. He threw it out. He wanted to sell more toys." But I believe that he really believed in these stories.
No, well, he did.
And then he got such bad press on him.
He absolutely did. I mean, we were honored that he got all excited again when we were doing the Clone Wars. He actually was part of that. He wrote some of them. He sat in on editorial script meetings. He was more a part of the Clone Wars than on, some of the feature film stuff that had come out recently. But he just, he really never felt he needed to defend himself. Of course, he didn't. But the thing he'd said the few times in response to an angry fan about the prequels, he would just go. I mean, the one time I actually heard him say something, he said, "What are you, 45?" And the guy's like, "Well, yeah." And he goes, "I didn't make it for you. I made it for 6-year-olds and 8-year-olds and 10-year-olds. So you didn't like it? So what? I didn't make it for you."
Yeah. Well, you know what it is? It's even people my age have an ownership of the whole thing, because it was a part of your childhood, and then you feel like, this is your world, that you have, ownership. There's some sort of ownership, but that is,
well, I've got two 9.5-year-olds, and they've seen everything I've done and all the original stuff. They like Jar Jar Binks. They actually got to meet him a couple weeks ago when we were
that poor guy, man. Talk about getting grief from the prequels. He was, really. Although I believe recently he did something and he got a whole round of applause and everybody was behind him. But he was in really bad shape for a long time over that, man.
Well, he couldn't make any appearances anywhere there were fans because they were so mean. No, not they. There's a very small percentage of the fan base that are nuts. Just as there are in any group of people, there are nuts. And unfortunately, they've lost sight of the fact that those are human beings, under the makeup. And, the poor guy just was crucified by 1 out of 200 nuts, that would be at any gathering he was at. So he just stopped going. Well, a month ago when we were in Chicago for Celebration, he got a standing O. People, were like, "Thank you for showing up." And he couldn't be nicer. He's the nicest guy in the world, but he felt like he wasn't part of the family. But that's been rectified. And again, like the stuff they did to Kelly Tron, how she because there were a handful of insane people that were given her. She was the Asian girl, in the recent movies.
Oh, yeah. There was all kinds of backlash. Why? What, was that just some racism? Why was there a backlash on that?
I think it wasn't racism in the sense that these people think there's something wrong with being Asian. They don't think that she's inferior because she's Asian. They just think there were no Asians in Star Wars, the original one, so there should never be. That there were no Asians in that universe.
So what? Being Asian isn't canon or something? That's not right.
Exactly. Yes. No. That's exactly it. That being Asian isn't canon, and being, they even had a hard time accepting the fact that I think Billy Dee was in there because, at some point, but people look at the original trilogy as like that's the Holy Grail. So if it was in the original trilogy, it's okay. So they had a couple black people in the original trilogy. So then it's okay. There could be black people in the galaxy, but there were no Asians. So, it's just ridiculous. And the poor girl, I mean, my God, here it is, the biggest thing that's ever happened to her, probably the biggest thing she could have ever conceived of as an actress. And she felt like she couldn't even go on social media. But again, she came out when they showed the preview of episode 9 at Celebration. She got the biggest freaking standing ovation from everyone in the room, everyone on the stage, Kathleen Kennedy from, running the, everything. So everyone's making it up to her. But.
So you're recently, that's fabulous to hear, actually. But so now everybody's all sorts of feel good at this celebration recently and being nice and sweet, except for Tom Kane, who starts all kinds of freaking hullabaloo. Hold on. We have a viewer right now. There was an interviewer who was not as lucky as me. What happened?
Well, I was told I was going to be interviewed on the Star Wars show. And they didn't say anything about, they just said, go out and talk, answer the questions. And, I've made no bones about it that I was so freaking excited I started taking over Ackbar 6 years ago or so.
Listen, man, being Yoda is pretty cool. But you get a few more points from me by being Ackbar, man. That's more fringe. That's like almost a cooler role. It's neat.
It is. Well, and that's why ultimately I was kind of ticked off about, the forest moon of Endor will be in it. It's a trap. All power to the forward shield. That kind of thing.
Oh, wait, hold on. I got a clip. Wait, I forgot.
Proximity alert!
They found us.
That's impossible. That's Snoke's ship. You gotta be kidding me. Can we jump to light speed?
I don't even think I have that clip.
Hold the stern! Rotate shield! We need to what?
Full engines ahead. Get out of range of the Star Destroyers and the fighters will fall back.
All craft, full engines! Concentrate rear shield!
And there I go.
Admiral Ackbar, all our leadership, they're gone.
Okay, so
what happened?
And then that was it. That was the end of Ackbar that we just saw, right?
And all I was going to say, which I didn't get the chance to, was, Mark Hamill actually, when I was talking to him, I said, "Yeah, I'm going to get crucified by Lucasfilm because everyone's thinking I was trashing on the movie," and he just said, "Yeah, I try not to do very many interviews anymore." I'm like, "Well, you can get away with that. I can't." But he said, "Yeah, your problem is you waited for the punchline. You need to put the punchline first." What I was going to say before I got cut off was, "Oh my God, I love the movie. In spite of a lot of people that are weird about it, I loved it. I was so freaking excited to be, on screen as a character that like you said, it's almost a cult thing. I love Ackbar. And I'm finally doing a big character in a big Star Wars movie on screen, and it's like I get blown out the door, and Well, that was my punchline. I never got there. What I did is I started saying, "Yeah, what's this deal with blowing him out the door after 5 seconds?" I'm like, "Who's this Holdo woman? No one knows who she is. She's got purple hair, and no one knows who she is. No one's invested in her, and suddenly she's the one sacrificing herself for the fleet. It should have been Ackbar." And that's when I was going to say, and again, I don't care. I love the movie, and it was great.
But I think the reaction to that has been positive, though. People. The fan base agrees with you, though.
Well, and so did the editor. That's the funny part. Is one of the articles, someone interviewed the guy that edited the movie, and he said, "Yeah, I agree with him." He goes, "I don't usually go back and watch my stuff, but I went back and watched it, and he's right. I really kind of gave short shrift to Ackbar's demise." So I'm like, thank God, I've got a little cover.
You know, man, there's no way they could have snuck it in because it would have been dumb. But how fun would it have been to read "It's a Trap"? Like if it was in there, man, you'd be like, "Oh my God, that'd be such a great line."
Well, that would be great if only I could have. But yeah. So anyway, I don't think anybody had a problem because they've hired me 3 times since then. But and I just felt bad because a lot of the people in the headlines were like, "He's trashing Ryan Johnson," or I'm like, I never even mentioned Ryan Johnson. And he's trashing the movie. I'm like, I didn't trash the movie.
God forbid you say anything anywhere at all, and there's a microphone there, then there's going to be drama.
Well, that's even that.
But it was just funny because the interviewer guy was like flustered.
Well, he did. Well, because I think he probably had been told if somebody goes off the rails and starts bagging on anything, deflect them. And again, in my head, I wasn't criticizing anything. I mean, it's nothing I haven't heard from 10,000 fans. So I just thought it was kind of taken for granted. And again, the editor seemed to agree with me. So anyway.
That's fun. Okay. So, all right. So this is before, for those who don't know, well, everybody knows that Disney bought Lucasfilm and they bought all the Star Wars stuff. But you were in with Lucasfilm, like you said, doing the games and stuff before you were even doing any cartoons or whatever. And this was before Disney had bought Lucasfilm. So you were with Lucasfilm and then you were with Disney. But were you doing Disney stuff? Because you do other Disney stuff, like the trailers and stuff that we saw before.
Well, yeah,
so you were doing for both companies, and then the one company bought the other, and you said, this is not going to suck for me.
Well, you know what? Honestly, there was no connection between the two. The stuff I did for Disney had no connection to the stuff I did for Lucasfilm, except, and this is, I think, part of why I was just kept on along with most of the Star Wars actors. They were doing voices. Is because it was all integrated, even though they were 2 separate companies. Disney Parks had a Star Wars land. I was all over the parks as the Star Wars characters. And then because they found out, they heard me doing other things, Disney Parks started using me. I'm the voice of the monorail system.
That's what I was going to say. You're on the damn monorail. And now there was 2 voices. There was one that was a long time ago, but there was one that they used for a while. Well, that was very, very iconic. That stand clear of the closing doors was super iconic.
No, I'm still the guy that's on the monorail and all the buses and trams. And I'm when you walk in the park, I'm ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Disneyland, the happiest place on earth. So and I've got enough stuff there that they got to know me as other than a Star Wars voice, but. Honestly,
but then you're kind of like you're a voice of Disney. You're like almost an embodiment of the park doing that stuff. I mean, really. I mean, if you think, not to be morose or whatever, but like, or that, it's the end of your career, like we're wrapping stuff up or whatever. But I mean, really, of all the things that you've done, if you think, well, what would be my, epitaph, or how are you going to live on? Being a part of the actual parks itself, I mean, in some ways, a lot cooler even than, being Yoda or some of these other roles.
Well, one of the things I've talked to my agent about, they apparently every year or 2, they have a big Disney thing in Anaheim. And it's just like a little convention only for Disney stuff. And they bring in, famous voices. So apparently I'm on the list to come do that sometime. So.
The Disney fans that are just fans of like the parks, they're even bigger crazed fans than the Star Wars fans, man. They go nuts, man. They move there and stuff.
I've had people that have brought me things they've printed off the interwebs, just a picture of the monorail, and asked me to autograph a monorail picture. So I'm like, yeah, sure. But yeah, there are fans out there that are above and beyond. But yeah, they, so it just there really never was a transition for us, because we had been working with a lot of the Disney people all along, and in the parks and the other things. And Lucasfilm is still very autonomous, even though it's owned by Disney. Kathleen Kennedy was with Lucasfilm before Disney bought it, and she has been running. She's still running it, and there is, of
That's
course,
how Pixar has always been too, right?
Yes.
A very separate
Yes.
entity. They kept their culture and whatever.
Yeah, I'm sure. Of course, I'm sure Disney has input on things because they're the owners. But
Well, they
everything
own like 400 other companies too. I
Right,
mean,
yeah.
they don't mousify everything.
Well, exactly, and fans were freaking out when the purchase noise, and I was getting huge numbers of emails and stuff and I'm going, guys, did you think Disney bought Lucasfilm to ruin it? They bought Lucasfilm to make more awesome things that make them money, to get their money back from the investment. So I'm pretty sure they're going to, leave well enough alone and not screw it up, which I think is borne out. But yeah, I was like going, no, they're not. What do you think they're going to do? Suddenly, make everything rated G? It's not, So anyway, but that's been borne out. But I was, like I said, Disney bought Lucasfilm because they wanted Lucasfilm, and they have Lucasfilm. It's still its own separate entity in terms of, most of the management is still there. The people that are the creatives are still there. Dave Filoni was hired by George, and now he's a vice president of something, and Disney loves him. He's directing. I'm not even sure that's official information, but anyway, yes. So yes, it's still very Lucasfilm is still its own thing, and Disney is just happy to have the dump trucks of $100 bills pull up every couple hours.
Well, I mean, they paid for the initial outlay was insane.
Oh yeah,
so
$4 billion.
Yeah, man, that's way to go, George. I'm actually a Disney fan. I love Disney. I love going to Disney World.
Oh yeah.
Our youngest is 2, and she's a brat. So we're waiting until we think she's 4. And he said, that's good. You don't want to bring them when they're too young, So that's the plan. That'll be the next time I go. So I'll have to hear you in the new Star Wars section. I was always, that's going to be cool. I was always a fan of, he's one of my favorite voiceover people, actually, of all time, Thurl.
Oh my gosh.
Did a lot of Disney stuff, man. And that, in the Haunted Mansion and stuff. And they're still using them. So, they could be using you. For how many years ago was that, the Haunted Man? How many years ago was he in the booth for? Well,
I think I recorded the Jedi Training Academy stuff a decade ago, and it's unchanged. It's still there. I'm Yoda and 3PO on that, I think. But yeah, it just the stuff lives on there forever. And Thurl was amazing. He people don't people don't realize it, but Thurl was the voice of Tony the Tiger for 45 years until he was in his 90s, and he was Frosted Flakes. They're great. I actually did 5 commercials in the UK when he was ill back in a million years ago, and over there they were called Sugar Frosties. But they I found out when I was doing that he was, not only was he Tony the Tiger, but he was uncredited until it came out on Blu-ray. He was uncredited as he was in The Grinch, How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
Yeah, which is the best that's the best holiday movie of all time, and he was amazing in it. Absolutely incredible.
He never got a credit because they added that you're a mean one, Mr. Grinch. You're a rotten son of a bitch. They added all that because it was pretty much done, and the credits were done, everything's done, and they played it for some test audience, and this is dead as a doornail. It really was just dead as a doornail. So they added musical, and they brought him in as the narrator, and him singing "You're a mean." All that was added after the fact, and it didn't occur to anybody to go back and revise the credits. So he was never credited for that until it came out on either DVD or Blu-ray, and then they redid the credits. But
I bought the DVD just this past Christmas. I tell you, youngest is like 2, and that was always my favorite one. I said I'm not going to search for it, and whatever, it's like $5, for the Blu-ray or whatever. Right. And she watched it like 1,000,000 times, man. She thought for some reason they were all the Who's were monkeys. So she just asked for monkeys. I want to watch monkeys. So, and that was like my favorite holiday thing. But then once you've heard that song like 400,000 times by December 25th, I was like, I'm done. I'm out, man. Actually, we pulled out some movies from the boys' collection, her older brother, and it was like Cars or something like that. But it was an older movie, and it was one of your trailers was in there. You were doing the menu or something like that. But I mean, this movie has to be quite a, so you've been doing that Disney stuff for a long ass time.
I went through a period where I must have done 50 of those DVD commentary menu things for, mostly all Disney and Pixar. And I've done a ton of trailers for Disney and Pixar stuff, but they still use me constantly. So and again, it's not because I'm affiliated with Disney in other capacities. Because again, they just pick the voice that the client says, yeah, I want that guy. And I'd like to believe that being Yoda somehow maybe has something to do with it, but and no one ever brings it up. It's not like their clients are picking me and then asking for, recordings for their kids. So I don't know if that really has anything to do with it, but.
Well, I mean, obviously you're good and you get it, but I think, it is possible too, and maybe you wouldn't know, but there's folks there that know that you know what you're doing. And so they kind of, they push that. They know that you come in and you're a professional and it's not going to take you 800 takes. And, there's certain, in animation especially, you'll see some of the same names over and over and talent get complain about it. And they go, why is she in the next freaking, there's, she's already done 50 cartoons and they hired her for another one and whatever. Well, yeah, man, maybe you would have been a little better for it, or maybe there are other actresses that could have done it, but they know this chick. She goes in, she nails it, and everybody gets to go home on time. So, that can't be hurting either.
When I talk to people about that aspect of it, I call it the plumber effect. If you have a 100-year-old house and it occasionally needs some drippy pipes fixed or a faucet replaced or whatever, and you're constantly calling a plumber, and you've found a plumber that you've used for 10 years and he shows up on time and he fixes the job and he charges you a fair price and he cleans up and goes home till the next time you call him. The next time you get a drippy faucet, are you going to go to the internet and find a new plumber? No, you're going to call the same guy. Well, casting directors are human just like you are with a plumber. If they're going to have a French chef that's got 12 lines, they're not going to have an audition and look at 25 new people and go, well, let's get a whole new guy that do the French chef that we've never even met before. Why? Because again, the audience for cartoons are little kids.
See, but that pisses off talent, though, because it's this work begets work, and so you got to get in at some point, and then once you get in on the ground level, then it's like, man, a lot of times you just start working.
Well, and I did the same thing. I came out to LA. I was 25 years old, something like that.
Yeah, but by this time, this is old hat, too. You'd already done a million commercials by then.
Right, but no cartoons because I was in the Midwest. So they signed me when they signed me because they thought I would be like the next big cartoon guy, because I did have that reel that I say not to do, of just me doing different dialects and stuff like that, and trying to imitate some cartoon characters, although I really didn't. Most of it was just me doing voices. But I auditioned for, I think it was over a year. And I mean, not once a month, but once or twice a week for over a year before I landed one small bit part in a cartoon. And it wasn't that I'm just so much more talented than I was back then. It was the plumber effect. They didn't know me. I was an unknown quantity. Why would they hire this Tom Kane guy who they'd never worked with before when there's 5 other guys in the room that they know are, like you said, going to walk in, nail it in 2 takes, and go home?
It's another reason you have to be in LA, like you were saying. You got to pay your dues.
No, that's the 100% of the reason, is because if you literally don't show up time after time after time after time, they have no connection to you. You're nothing to them. You're just a voice on an MP3 audition. So they don't develop any sense of guilt that, gosh, this guy's been in here 15 times over the last year. He does a great audition every time. He seems like a nice guy. Let's go ahead and use him, because by then you're a known quantity to them, at least, as someone they're more comfortable with. And that's how it happens. That's how it happened with me. I got in one job for, it was actually Disney. I think my very first job was Prince Valiant. But
this was after a year, before you finally got one little thing? Yeah, and it was a Disney thing? Wow, it was worth the wait.
But I'm sitting there doing, this one episode, one character I think I had, again, like 12 lines. But suddenly my agent rather, I didn't have a manager yet. My agent was able to say, yeah, he's auditioned for you for blah, blah, blah. And he just booked a Disney spot. And all of a sudden the light bulb goes off and they're like, well, if someone hired him and they know the director, I don't know if anybody ever calls him, but he says, hey, I understand you just use this Tom guy, and I was thinking of using him for whatever. Was he okay? I'm sure that happens at some level.
That happens all the time, man. We all talk. Yeah, well, especially if someone was a pain in the ass and everything was wrecked, man, people talk for sure.
That is something I get people all the time being very nice, and they say, we've heard of, 20 different voiceover guys talk, at conventions or whatever, and they all, a lot of people will say, gosh, you all seem really nice. And I'm like, well, generally we are, because again, I'm not picking on Brad Pitt because I've heard he's actually a really nice guy. But if you need Brad Pitt, you need Brad Pitt. And if Brad Pitt's a dick, you still need Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
And you have to put up with whatever, foibles a lot of these people have, because if the director wants that guy, and the writer who has written it for that guy, you need to use that guy. So you need to just suck it up and deal with it. Well, if it's a voice and you're a dick, well, there's 3 more in the wings waiting to do it, and they sound just as good as you do. So nobody will put up with a voiceover person being a jerk or having an attitude, because they don't need to. There is nobody saying, you have to use Tom Kane as Yoda. It's just that because I am, they call him, say, oh, we need Yoda. They call Tom Kane. If suddenly
it's going to be tough.
If I suddenly started demanding a private jet and limousines and crazy stuff, which again, on camera people do all the time, I start pulling that crap, and they're going to be like, yeah, that's the problem.
Well, that's why so many of them are jerks. And it's not just actors. I mean, it's musicians, anybody, which is just insane that we take entertainers and put them up on such a pedestal. But they've got 100 people following them around, wiping their ass. And, what can I do for you? Let me separate your M&Ms for you and whatever. And that goes to your head after a while. A voiceover, people like, nobody cares about us, man. We're, there's no trailer. There's no, was talking in another show. I don't remember what I was talking about. I was like, you watch the credits and it's like the best boy and like the gaffer and like craft services. And then it's like the voiceover people. Like, no, there's no, like nobody cares, man. So, it's, I guess, you just don't build up that kind of attitude.
Yeah. Well, it just, even going back to, one of my heroes, Mel Blanc, who was, there's 5 guys now that it takes to do what he did by himself. But, even though he was every freaking voice Warner Brothers had, he didn't even get individual credits. It wasn't Daffy Duck. All he got is in the middle of nowhere, like you said, in the middle of the, the guys that filled in the cells. It said vocal characterizations, Mel Blanc.
Yeah. Oh, man, I could see that actually now. Yeah. That is how he was credited.
It should have been.
And now, he's like a god,
Yeah, but vocal characterizations by Mel Blanc. I'm like, what the hell's a vocal characterization? But anyway, but that's as big a credit as he got until probably the 60s, But yeah, crazy. But
Tom Kane has probably one of the coolest careers in voiceover. Really, you hit like the freaking pinnacle, man. You've done some of the coolest stuff that there is. What's left? Really.
I've been very lucky. I've gotten some amazing animation roles. I've been for four times the announcer for the Oscars, and last year I was the opening Oscar guy, and I have been in the right place at the right time and was able to deliver what they needed, which is important, obviously. But you'd be amazed at how many people think they want to get into voiceover work, and they really think, well, I can talk, so of course I can do voiceovers.
Yeah, listen, all you have to do is be as incredibly talented and a mimic like Tom Kane, and then bust your ass for like 40 years, and then you can announce the Oscars as well. It's easy.
And I am not, God knows, I am not trying to draw a comparison between what I do and somebody that's a brilliant painter, but I can hold a paintbrush and I can move it in paint and mush it on a canvas. I'm never, ever, ever, no matter how many decades, lifetimes I spend doing that, never am I going to paint like Van Gogh or Da Vinci. I'm never going to be able to do that. I just don't have that talent. And that's just the way it is with a lot of things. I don't care how many lessons my mom takes, she's never going to sound like Barbra Streisand. So, it's just, you have to be born with a certain amount of just talent for that sort of thing. I mean, there's an apocryphal story, I doubt it's true, but supposedly, for those of you who know Mozart, he was absolutely the definition of a prodigy. He composed Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star when he wasn't tall enough to see the keys on the harpsichord. That's, believe it or not, that was Mozart at the age of 2, reaching up and not being able to actually see the keys and plinking out bum, 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 bum. That was Mozart. Fast forward, he's in his 20s, he's on his 3rd concerto and symphony and whatever, and after some court lackey came up to him and said, "Oh my gosh, that symphony was just brilliant. It was sublime. It was incredible." And Mozart said, "Well, thank you very much. I've been working on it for years, and I'm happy with how it came out." And the guy said, "Well, I've been thinking of composing some symphonies myself." And Mozart said, "Well, a symphony is an extraordinarily complicated form. I would suggest if you're just starting out, you work on something much simpler, like an etude or whatever the thing was." And the guy says, "Well," he goes, "I understand you composed your first symphony when you were 8. How hard can it be?" And he goes, "Yes, that's true. I was writing music when I was a child, but I never had to ask anyone how."
Ouch. It's a time.
But yeah, it's
reference.
like, and I'm not, again, I'm not, God knows, I'm not comparing myself to Mozart, but it's like,
Tom,
there's a lot of times
the
when I'm like,
self-professed master of voiceover, the Renoir of voiceover, is what he's trying to tell you.
Yeah, well, and again, and part of that is because, as I say, there's not an original bone in my body. I grew up watching, some of my, I have heroes. I look at what Billy West does, and Tom Kane, and Jess and Jim and all these, Rob Paulson and Maurice. These guys come up with some really, really creative, original stuff. I've always just been a good mimic. I take my professor. I was friends with Gary Owens for 30 years. And when I was auditioning for Professor Utonium, I actually asked him, I said, the voice I've come up with is kind of a blend of me and you. He was the Fickle Finger of Faith Award. And then I took that and diluted it 50% with me, and I end up with Professor Utonium. Bubbles, Blossom, Buttercup, you can kick Mojo Jojo's butt tomorrow. And now it's time to do your homework, girls. Well, and I booked it. And so, when someone wants me to do an old cowboy, I don't come up with a new voice. I give him a little Gabby Hayes, maybe mixing a little Walter Brennan, and it's like, oh, it's an old cowboy, old prospector. I'm just mimicking something I grew up watching. So, I don't consider myself, that's why I jokingly say, God knows I'm not comparing myself to someone like a Mozart or Van Gogh, because they really were originals. I'm not. I just steal from the best. I take character voices that I grew up hearing, and I take a bit of this one and a bit of that one, and I mix them together, and hopefully it's something people want to hear. And so far it's been pretty good.
Good Lord. Tom Kane. Tom, in lieu of payment for your appearance, plug away. What are you doing? What are you working on? What's coming out? Plug.
Well, most of it I can't talk about because there's a lot of Star Wars stuff. I've just finished a couple games and additions to a new game, and then a big revision to something that exists. And I'll be heading out to LA in a couple of months to do some stuff on perhaps the new movie with a number 9 in its title. I don't know, but yeah, I mean,
what are you trying to say exactly?
I don't know. And I don't even know what it'll be. I'm not joking. I won't know what I'm doing until I get in the room and they start looking at the script. And I mean, like when I did Ackbar, I didn't even know I was doing Ackbar until all of a sudden they cleared the room and Ryan Johnson walked in, and I'm like, "What's going on?" They're like, "Well, they didn't want anybody to see the scene where Princess Leia and Ackbar got things, so they made everybody leave except me." And I'm like, "Oh God, am I getting fired? What happened?" And
wow.
Like, "Oh, no, we just don't want anybody to see this stuff." I'm like, "Why am I here?" I'm like, "Well, you're Ackbar." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, why am I in here?" And they're like, well,
"Wait, you didn't know you were Ackbar, or you just didn't know that scene?"
Well, no, because I had been doing Ackbar. I've been doing Ackbar for years, but I
in the games and stuff.
In the games and toys and and the parks. and it didn't occur to me. I just assumed, well, they'll probably have an audition and find someone to replace the guy who died at 90 something. And no, they're like, well, no, he's been Ackbar. We'll just
hold on. I'm trying to get off the freaking line with you, but this is good. So you're in the on set, in the booth, whatever, doing whatever.
A soundstage.
Right, exactly. Thank you. And then out of nowhere, it just gets dropped on you that first you're going to be now like a major, cult figure character and this isn't for a video game or a whatever. This is, the big screen, whatever Jedi thing. No kidding.
Yeah, I was in there doing other characters, other voices. I was a droid, and was it that one anyway? I can't remember.
Did you shit or what? Did you lose it?
Well, no.
I mean, obviously, you had to be professional, but afterwards, were you like, God damn, it's freaking Ackbar, man?
Oh no, but there was definitely some flop sweat, because Ryan's a very calm guy. So for the first couple takes, I wasn't sure I was giving him what he wanted, and he gave me some direction, and I changed it, and then it gave me a little more, and I changed it. Which again, the value of good direction. He basically directed me into the part, and all of a sudden he just looked up and goes, "Yeah, that sounds great to me. We're good." And I'm like, "Okay." And he left, and before all the other people came back in, I turned to the guy who, he's the sound designer, is Matt Wood. He's also the voice of General Grievous, but he's now the VP of something, sound design at Lucasfilm, and he's been nominated for a couple Oscars and stuff. And I'm like going, was that an audition? I mean, and he goes, no, I guess apparently you're Ackbar. So I'm like, I just sat there, yeah, it happens that way, it sounds ridiculous, but that's the way that stuff happens.
You don't deserve C-3PO and Ackbar. You didn't even want to see the movie.
I wanted to see the movie.
Yeah, sure. Now, revisionist. Now you wanted to see it, sure.
Well, yeah.
Tom, thank you very much for spending
my pleasure.
This amount of time and sharing your story. A lot of people watch this, they're a voice talent, and everybody's different, man, and your journey has been, different for sure.
Well, and if you want to have me on, I don't know, what different topics you cover, but there's always people that are looking for a little advice on how to get from point A to point B, and if you ever want to have me on sometime to just give some more technical talk about getting into voiceover work, I'd be happy to do that too. So,
absolutely.
Got it.
Again. Thank you very much, Mr. Tom Kane.
My pleasure.
Everybody. Yay!
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. All right.
Thank you.
Talk to you later, man.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Amazing. Mr. Tom Kane. I love him. You love him. We all love him. Holy cow, what a story. Listen, you want more of this? Well, let me know. Hit like. Hit subscribe if you sub. Then we'll do more, man. I got more friends. So, fun. Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm out of here.